The left does not hate crypto. Scroll through the social media platforms that crypto enthusiasts and think boys like to post, and you'll get the idea pretty quickly that a whole lot of them think that the left is fundamentally opposed to cryptocurrency and its use, and the only way to protect crypto from being totally destroyed from the hammer of communism is to vote for Donald Trump. Not necessarily because they like him, but because of the danger that Democrats pose to our tokens. A lot of this has been fueled by actions taken by people like Elizabeth Warren, who has, in her position as a senator, pushed for stronger regulations on cryptocurrencies in the United States and even campaigned for an anti-crypto army. And former investment banker Gary Gensler, who as the chair of the SEC has led some regulatory actions to be taken against particular crypto companies the past few years. We've also seen Democrats like Sherrod Brown from the Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee pontificating about banning crypto in the aftermath of the FTX collapse, and others pining for stricter crypto regulation in the name of protecting investors. However, what's critical to understand in all of this is that their justifications for their actions have nothing to do with pushing for a left-wing, aka anti-capitalist agenda, and have more to do with liberal ideals, i.e. center-right, around how markets should behave. The liberal mindsets can be best summarized in the beginning of this interview with Dennis Kelleher, the co-founder, president, and CEO of Better Markets, a Washington, D.C.-based nonprofit.
I'm not anti-crypto. I'm pro-investor. I'm pro-consumer. I'm pro-markets, and I'm pro-financial stability. The Security Exchange Commission actually exists to protect investors, markets, and financial stability while promoting capital formation. People forget that the United States markets are the envy of the world. They're the deepest, broadest, most liquid. Everybody around the world would like to have our markets because everybody around the world sends their money to our markets, and that's the jet fuel for our economy, business creation, and jobs.
Sure. Mr. Kelleher makes it clear that the reason he and other liberals are critics of crypto is because they see themselves as protectors of American capitalism. He says he is pro-capital formation in the United States, a very pro-capitalist and even nationalist thing to say, not very left-wing at all. This is also besides the fact that the existing financial system of the United States is extremely anti-worker, with punitive credit scores, tax regimes that favor the rich, and already existing for decades now exploitative and predatory loans programs. But so if you were to look at the representatives of what can broadly be called the left that have even held important political positions, you would see a very different thing. Rowan Gray, a legal scholar who worked with Rashida Tlaib in drafting legislation in the past on eCash, and although still somewhat a critic of cryptocurrency, has made it clear that he disagrees with much of the things that the Elizabeth Warren people have said and implied about crypto because of its likely downstream effects on broader civil liberties.
I have spoken out against that stuff. I think Elizabeth Warren, now when she ran, of course, there was her and Bernie. They looked like similar from a distance. They're quite different, right? Elizabeth Warren was a Republican most of her life. Her whole platform was America first, which for any actual leftist is incredibly imperialist, right? It's incredibly nationalistic in a way that I am not nationalistic, and Bernie certainly wasn't in that way. And in recent times, it has been very pro-cop. Right? The only people who use anonymous money are criminals. This is stuff that's coming out of the Elizabeth Warren playbook. It's bad. I've said it's bad publicly. It is bad. I'll say it right now. It is in her zealousness to go after private power. She is allying with the cops. And that's not a good place for a progressive to be.
If you look at actions taken by who is considered generally the most left-wing person in Congress historically, the only thing Bernie Sanders has ever made a public statement about crypto was signing a call for the IRS to rein in crypto tax evaders. Other than that, he's made no other statements on it. Even AOC, who served in the House Committee on Financial Services from 2019 to 2022, has made minimal comments about cryptocurrency. In a hearing with a Coinbase executive while she was in that committee, if you pay attention, she's actually giving a thoughtful questioning of their business. In fact, the only thing she's ever even tweeted about crypto from what I could find was a tweet warning people in 2020 about several accounts sharing Bitcoin scams. Now, much more interestingly from the left, if you look towards Europe at people like Yanis Varoufakis, who was the Marxist Minister of Finance of Greece during the Greek crisis in 2015, he famously considered moving Greece's monetary system away from the euro and towards Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrency in order to leave the EU. Although that plan never panned out due to the Syriza party's capitulation to the European Central Bank and European Commission's financial and monetary demands, Varoufakis has made it clear that the capabilities of blockchains like Ethereum are incredibly interesting and useful from a left-wing political lens. In fact, in the sci-fi he wrote titled Another Now, blockchain features as a technology used both by central banks and local communities to create a public distributed ledger for money and title leases for properties in a county's commercial zone. In fact, he's been recorded on multiple occasions lauding the technology, in particular Ethereum, for smart contracts. And he's not the only prominent leftist to do this. Back when I was first starting my blog, I published an article that went over comments made by both Noam Chomsky and Richard Wolff complimenting the technology and how, while there is a dominance in right-wing ideology around it, the potential for the left was largely unexplored. So why is there this seeming feeling with many in the crypto industry that Donald Trump is going to be the one to save them and their tokens from communism? Well, the very likely real reason is that Republican strategists have looked into the data and seen that of those that own crypto, there is an overrepresentation of ethnic minorities in the United States, a demographic famously hard to convince to vote Republican historically. So while many of the more moderate white Republicans who may have urgently voted for Trump in previous elections start moving towards the Democrats or not voting after constant disappointment, Republicans are aiming for young minorities who are looking to crypto while the Democrats and politics generally have utterly failed them. But it is absolutely asinine to choose to vote for Donald Trump because of his supposed pro-crypto policies. We are in a situation where we have a record of what he said and done about crypto while president. In 2019, as president, Trump tweeted, "I am not a fan of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, which are not money, and whose value is highly volatile and based on thin air. Unregulated crypto assets can facilitate unlawful behavior, including drug trade and other illegal activity." Even less than a year after his presidency, he stated on Fox Business the following.
Bitcoin, it just seems like a scam. I was surprised. With us, it was at 6,000 and much lower. I don't like it because it's another currency competing against the dollar. Essentially, it's a currency competing against the dollar. I want the dollar to be the currency of the world. That's what I've always said.
And now, for the past couple of years, in the lead up to this current election, he has suddenly done a 180 and embraced crypto in order to sell NFTs and other kinds of tokens to his supporters, clearly as a way to fund his campaign. His latest crypto coin project, called World Liberty Financial, gives the Trump family 75% of the revenue, and somehow gives them no liability for what happens. How can a space which contains so many people obsessed with the US debt think that this is someone to trust with their tokens?
Who knows, maybe we'll pay off our $35 trillion, hand him a little crypto check, right? We'll hand him a little Bitcoin and wipe out our $35 trillion.
And while Democrats certainly have a track record of this as well, Republicans especially have a track record of destroying any semblance of civil rights around respect for privacy. The Patriot Act in the aftermath of 9/11 was a gross violation of civil liberties for everyone in the US and spearheaded by the then Republican establishment of George Bush, with the one socialist senator of Vermont being one of the few to push back against it. And Trump has been consistent with his anti-civil liberties form of authoritarianism, both as president and in the lead up to the elections coming up. We've also seen in recent history people like Marco Rubio push his Sanctions Evasion Prevention and Mitigation Act to ensure our adversaries face economic consequences for their anti-democratic actions, ranging from committing human rights abuses to promoting terrorism, as well as to counter adversarial financial systems. Often, what is in reality legislation that will justify the government spying on you is framed as sanctions against American enemies like China, Russia, and Iran. And still, you have major crypto influences pushing an overly simplistic narrative that Republicans are pro-crypto and Democrats are anti-crypto. But this is also very disconnected from the reality that there are several Democratic politicians like Richie Torres and Cory Booker who have emphasized how crypto could be a democratizing force to increase financial access for people like immigrants sending money back home. You even had ex-Democratic Congressman Barney Frank of the Dodd-Frank Act on the board of Signature Bank, one of the two crypto-friendly banks that have shut down fairly recently. While I'm a leftist who's interested in crypto, it's likely I'm into it for very different reasons than these liberals. And so, in conclusion, it's an oversimplification to claim the left universally hates crypto, as the debates are more nuanced. I say this as someone who has been publicly representing the left in these discussions for 5 years now and has an entire book about it. The left's concerns with cryptocurrency historically have been around environmental damage, financialization benefiting the already wealthy, the proliferation of scams, and the aesthetic association it has with right-wing politics, rather than an ideological opposition to the technology itself. Luckily, the environmental damage part has been solved on the Ethereum side, but unlikely to be solved in Bitcoin world. Although there are arguments that proof-of-work mining is in fact useful in subsidizing the adoption of renewable energy infrastructure, although I'm not entirely sure where I stand on that argument. I'd love to do more research on that, and if you'd like to support, then you can support me on patreon.com/theblockchainsocialist, where you can give a little bit of money every month so that I can continue to create content like this. There is also an often overlooked criticism from the left about wanting a democratically governed, real anonymity providing digital cash system. The real left's critique doesn't come from an anti-technology or innovation stance. There are real criticisms to be made, but I do think that many of the critiques can be answered in a thoughtful way. Meanwhile, liberals have a technocratic critique of crypto that desires simply to preserve or only make incremental changes through electoral politics and bureaucratic tinkering. The professional managerial class that most represents liberals is one that uses its certifications and degrees they earned by abdicating to the status quo and succeeding in it. They have no intention of seeing the ossifying institutions have the radical change that they so desperately need. The professional managerial class that most represents liberals is one that uses its certification and degrees they earned by abdicating to the status quo and succeeding in it. They have no intention of seeing the ossifying institutions have the radical change that they so desperately need. Plenty of figures in the crypto world have also openly supported Kamala Harris. Not because she's a communist, but because this is how political power works in the United States. The crypto lobby has spent the most money it has ever spent on a presidential election so that no matter who wins, they will overall get what they want. This does not mean that you as retail will get a better deal, however, which is important to keep in mind. The crypto lobby does not fight for your interests, but just for those who are already crypto rich or just normal rich to keep the status quo. Even Vitalik Buterin, the founder of Ethereum, the largest cryptocurrency ecosystem in the world, has advised against voting for politicians because of their supposed crypto stances. He learned this lesson in part after visiting Russia and meeting Putin in 2018, who at the time expressed being open to crypto, who is now unequivocally an authoritarian. Crypto is not just about being able to freely speculate with tokens. There are actual political values embedded in its assumptions around privacy and access to high-quality information. So if you're still back and forth on this, I'll leave you with the last paragraph from Vitalik's article. If a politician is pro-crypto, the key question to ask is, are they in it for the right reasons? Do they have a vision of how technology and politics and the economy should go in the 21st century that aligns with yours? Do they have a good positive vision that goes beyond near-term concerns like smash the bad other tribe? If they do, then great, you should support them and make clear that that's why you are supporting them. If not, then either stay out entirely or find better forces to align with. Don't fall for the spectacle, think for yourself.